Yeah. 3-6, mafia.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey. Yeah. Whoa.
Say what? Whoa. 3-6 mafia. It's going down. Y'all know what time it is. We ain't playing with you. In the club, in the street. Y'all know what time it is.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another live edition of No BS Season 2, Episode 6, getting underway on this Thursday evening in San Diego, up in Northern California, and out in Columbus, Ohio. Good evening, folks, alongside the usual suspects, Trevor Williams and Isaiah Leung, Cal McClure, joining you folks here tonight on a spectacular Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. Trev, good to see you, buddy. How we doing tonight?
Pretty good. Excited to do the 6th episode of Season 2. Got a lot of good, I guess, topics to hit tonight, and an interesting Power 5 that will continue Isaiah's food streak, let's say.
Yeah, the food streak, folks, is still going on as we welcome in our resident Asian Skip Bayless. That is Isaiah Leung. Isaiah, good to see you, man. How we doing tonight?
Great to see you guys, Cal and Trevor. Can't wait for a fantastic show tonight. If you guys are wondering why I am wearing my Nick Mullins 49ers jersey, it's not because, 49ers season is around the corner. It's because tonight marks the official start of the 2020 college football season. It's been a long road to get here, but we're finally here. And the reason why I am rocking the Nick Mullins jersey is because the first FBS game of this 2020 college football season happens to include Nick Mullins' alma mater, Southern Miss, in it tonight. It is Southern Miss versus UAB. Can't wait for this game. I think the game already kicked off, but I can't wait. It's the start of a abnormal and really different college football season. But yeah, man, I can't wait to get this show underway.
We'll have more college football, folks, later in the program. By the way, folks, a very quick disclaimer I want to clean up here. No, we did not call each other. We did not text each other to all wear red today. Just happened to align that way. So, no, this was not pre-planned or preoccupied with us wearing red on the show today. But with that, guys, as mentioned, a great show lineup. And, of course, folks, we'll take your input live on the air today. Again, we're live via Facebook on 2 separate pages and also live via the MI6 Sports Network on YouTube. And, of course, folks, as we always usually do. But, of course, you can also subscribe to us on your podcast platforms, too, wherever you, in fact, get your podcast today, and find us on Apple, Spotify, you name it. We are there across the board. With that, guys, let's talk about the NBA postseason. And, again, we already had talked about last night on Wild Sports Talk, fellas, about the very sensational 7-game set between the Nuggets and the Jazz. But last night, of course, was the Rockets, we'll actually keep that one aside for right now. But let's go, though, first, fellas, to the Heat and Bucks series. And again, that is now a 2-0 Miami lead. Isaiah, we'll start with you on this one because I know that, of course, you were keeping tabs on this ball game last night in a very, I'd say, wild, loony, crazy, and I would also say, above all else, a perhaps controversial finish to this ball game between Milwaukee and Miami in regards to pretty much the last 20 seconds of this ball game yesterday. Isaiah, lay it out for us. What do you got for us for this game?
All right, before I get into my thoughts about the whole controversy that happened in the final 19 seconds of the game, Callan, do we have that clip of me talking about the Miami Heat? I think it was after the trading deadline in February. Do we have that clip?
Yes, we do. Here it is.
Guys, let's move on to the other big news, the NBA trade deadline. We had big plays going through, man. Andre Iguodala ended up with the Heat. D'Angelo Russell found a new home with his cat, Karl Anthony Towns. See what I did there? And the Golden State Warriors take on Wiggins' massive deal. Isaiah, I got to get your take, man. Winner and loser of the NBA trade deadline.
Listen, my winner right here, my big winner is my man Martin Garcia's Miami Heat. Shout out to you, Martin.
Shout out,
The Miami Heat have clinched the Eastern Conference title with their acquisition of Andre Iguodala. Listen, the Miami Heat were already a really great team. They were already really tenacious on defense. They could score a lot of points with Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam, and those boys. And now you add another tenacious defender in Andre Iguodala. This team is going to be the best defensive team in the NBA. They're going to surpass the Clippers. I don't care that the Clippers are Kawhi and Paul George. I'd rather roll with Andre Iguodala and Jimmy Butler. The Miami Heat are going to shut down Giannis in the playoffs. They're going to win the East, man. Right here. The Miami Heat are going to win the East. You heard it here first.
Amen.
Validation, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute validation. A lot of people, after they saw that video, came to me and said, Isaiah, you are crazy, man. You are delusional for saying that the Miami Heat had not only emerged as serious contenders against the Bucks, but I believe that Miami had overtaken the Milwaukee Bucks after what they did in the trading deadline by acquiring Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder to help make their team even better. And it's showing right now. The Miami Heat, you've got guys like Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, Goran Dragic, who have absolutely balled out and have been tenacious on defense. They've shut down Giannis and his supporting cast, and they've exposed the Bucks as a one-man show led by the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo. I said that the Heat would overtake. I mean, they have overtaken the Bucks, and that they would beat the Bucks. And so far, all the stuff that I said is coming to fruition with the Heat up 2-0 in that series. But enough about that. I want to talk about the controversy that emerged last night. So, Callan, Trevor, I got 3 words to describe my thoughts on this game. The 3 words are ball don't lie. Ball don't lie. Plain and simple. Let me explain why. Before I actually go on and talk about, the final 20 seconds, I just got to say, man, the Miami Heat, they were dominating this game through and through, and they held a 7-point lead with 19 seconds left. It should have been over. You've got to be able to close that down if you're the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler, you have to knock down those clutch free throws. If you knock down those clutch free throws, we're not even talking about the final 7 seconds of that game. The Miami Heat have got to get better at closing, because if they don't, they're not going to win a championship. But let's move on to the controversial final seconds. The reason why I say ball don't lie is because I don't believe it should have gotten to a tie ball game with 4 seconds left. On the previous possession, before the controversial Giannis foul on Jimmy Butler, the Milwaukee Bucks got away with a ticky-tack foul call. Come on, man. That wasn't even a foul by Goran Dragic. Just watch that replay. Chris Middleton, he is shooting a 3 to try to tie the game up, and Goran Dragic stays vertical with both of his arms up to guard Middleton. He was straight up. He didn't slide into the shooter, or even go under him, or even hit him on the arm. It was a great defensive stance by Goran Dragic. If you watch the replay, you would clearly see Chris Middleton, as he releases the basketball, leans in to Goran Dragic to initiate the contact and draws the offensive foul. He pushes himself onto Goran Dragic. That should have been an offensive foul. It was a terrible call by Mark Davis and his entire officiating staff, and I am so glad that the basketball gods gave the Miami Heat retribution for that absolute rubbish call that they made on Goran Dragic. And now let's move on to the Giannis controversial foul. I thought the foul on Giannis Antetokounmpo was the same thing like Goran Dragic. It was absolute BS, and Giannis, he played perfect defense on that shot. He doesn't touch Jimmy Butler on the arm. He doesn't go under him to disrupt the shot. He merely just slightly touches him on the hip, and he gets called for a foul. That is the softest foul call I have ever seen in my life, and it ruined such an epic game. Can these refs for once, just learn to let the players play, for goodness sakes. Nobody pays good money and tunes in to watch the referee show. No, we want to see these stars go out there and compete and light it up on the basketball court. It's just extremely frustrating to see these great games go to waste because referees decide, hey, they want to be the hero or they want to be the ultimate decider and, you know, and end up ruining these damn games. It's just so frustrating, man. I wish that, you know, they would have let the players play and that it didn't happen the way it happened yesterday. But hey, it is what it is. I think that the Milwaukee Bucks are in a world of trouble. I think that the Miami Heat have got them where they want. And I believe that Miami now will finish the Bucks in 5 games.
So, Trevor, we'll kind of steer away from the predictions right now, though, but things do look grim now for Milwaukee. We know, of course, everyone kind of panicked about them and the Lakers losing the first game of their first-round matchups with Portland and Orlando, and they both came back strong in Game 2, though. But now, though, Milwaukee, I think, is in a world of trouble, though. I believe that they are, in fact, in a world of hurt right now, down 2-0 against a very good and very energetic and exciting Miami Heat team again, with really, other than Jimmy Butler and Bam, a lot of guys that probably are kind of coming into their own right recently. And I think, though, that Isaiah, though, is on to a great point, though, is like I've always said, though, Trevor, this goes for the NBA, the NFL, and even the WNBA. When they publish that final 2-minute report where they literally break down every single whistle that goes on in the last 2 minutes, maybe the last minute now, depending on how the rules have changed, I just say it's flat out irrelevant that in my mind that the referees, or at least that the NBA refereeing committee, can write up this, thorough report of every single whistle that happened in the last 2 minutes of a game, and then just out of the blue say, oh, by the way, we missed a shot clock violation or a backcourt violation, or we missed a foul here. It's like, that's good and all, but that doesn't change the outcome of a ball game. It still goes in favor of Miami. And again, we had a very, very loony last 20 seconds there down in Orlando. But Trevor, give us your thoughts, though, mainly, probably more so about this game, more so than anything else between Miami and Milwaukee.
I guess just this game in general, there was like a lot of momentum in this game going on. Because I believe I looked at a stat that 7 of the Miami Heat players scored in the double digits. So Miami really came to play in this series, and there was no taking the gas off from start to finish. Though they blew a big lead in this game, the Bucks were able to close it down and only end up losing to foul shots at the tail end. Just imagine that Jimmy Butler didn't get fouled at the end. That game would have gone to overtime, and he could easily split this game series to 1-1 since Giannis had that momentum going into overtime. And, he could have his little MJ moment or a legendary moment that could be like, hey, Giannis is back. He's going to be able to control the East. But since they end up going down in this series, now can Giannis win 2 games back-to-back, make it 2-2 overall? Or will he have to come back from a 3-1 deficit like the Utah Jazz had to do to end up clinching, I guess, their spot?
I agree, fellas. And mainly, I know, of course, that this is a very interesting sequence of events because, again, I don't know if we've seen that much utter lunacy take place in a basketball game, let alone in the final moments of a game where we see, both teams get, probably in a lot of people's minds, maybe gifted free throws at the very end, where, of course, normally I think 9 times out of 10, I'd say now 8 times out of 10, that the referees in a basketball game put the whistles in their back pocket. They rip it off the lanyard and put it away, and they don't usually want to be in that spotlight, though. But I think, though, Isaiah, that the referees, I think, in both this game and even, I think, Game 7 of the Oklahoma City-Houston game are under a very big microscope after the events that occurred last night. Do you agree with that, and why?
Oh, I totally agree. I think what happened last night in the final seconds of the Milwaukee-Miami game is that they made the mistake by giving Chris Middleton those 3 free throws. They saw on the replay that that it should have been an offensive foul, but they made a mistake on it, and then they just had to give they basically had to give Miami redemption for it. Like Doris Burke said it on the telecast last night that she was really ticked off about it because once you make a mistake on one side, the refs feel inclined to give the other team another chance or a foul, so they can give them a gift for it's like payback. So it just completely ruined the game. I hated it, and I just wish that it never happened, but it did happen. And I just hope these other refs can learn from these refs' mistakes.
Trevor, I think Isaiah has a tremendous point, though, as I would think in regards to if you do it one way, you have to do it another way. I think about it, though, mainly in baseball, for example, when a umpire, for instance, has a missed or, probably calls a pitch, it's not a strike for one team, and then you come back the next time up, or that team that got that gift gets that called against them, where it's like a makeup call in baseball. Trevor, do you agree about Isaiah's points, though, in regards that maybe the referees obviously not putting the whistles away, but at the same time, though, perhaps in a lot of people's minds, doing it both ways, though, but at the worst possible time to be gifting someone free throws?
First thing I would like to say is I made a mistake. I said the Utah Jazz. I meant the Denver Nuggets end up winning the series, but obviously that 3-1 deficit. But I think when you look at a ref trying to bounce out a game, there's no way that we ever seen a refs call a perfect game without saying, oh, this foul was called right, or this little extra. So at a give and take, at the end of the day, they're still humans, and they're still going to make the mistakes to try to balance the game out. So they may call a wrong call at one point in time, but when it's one of those calls that changes the whole face of the games, like we see it in college football with the whole targeting call, and you get a player ejected, that changes the whole momentum of the game. And we saw tonight with the NBA and the three-point shot that could have been an offensive foul, that literally dictated the entire game at that last 7 seconds that were left on the clock, and that forced Butler to shoot that foul to end up putting him on the line for the Heat to end up winning that game. So if you take that call out, obviously the Heat would dribble off the clock, and then that would have been the end of the game. But I think at the same time, it's more the lines that at the end of the day, you're going to get those calls no matter how much you want to call that game and all that stuff. So you can't avoid those types of calls.
I agree. At the end of the day, the refs are humans, though. But again, though, I think that it's worse, though, or I think it's magnified more so, fellas, because this is during an NBA playoff game that this is happening in regards to, missed calls and stuff like that. So I definitely think, though, that probably there is some explaining to do, though, but more so than a 2-minute report, though, where you probably break down all these plays in a very, nicely typed out Times New Roman essay about, hey, we had this called here and that called here. It still won't change the complexion of that ball game. Isaiah, we'll go over to the question that I posed in the chat for the audience tonight. Is it over now that Miami is up 2-0 on Milwaukee in your mind?
I believe it is, because right now, if you look at it, the Heat, with the last 19 or with the last 50 seconds of game 2 not counting, the Heat have been the far better team thus far in this series. They've dominated the Milwaukee Bucks. They've been great defensively. Jimmy Butler has been great at scoring the basketball and leading his team. Goran Dragic is balling out. He looks way different he looks like the Goran Dragic of old. And then you've got the young kids like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson who have stepped up and shined from three-point land. And then Bam Adebayo has been doing his thing inside the post. So it's just been a complete team effort for the Miami Heat. And right now it's like you're having 8 guys against one guy and maybe another guy for the Bucks if he does step up, but it's 8 against 2. It's not really fair right now in this series.
So, Trevor, Isaiah's leaning, I think, probably right now leaning towards it being over for Milwaukee. What do you think? Is it over with the Heat up 2-0 on the Bucks in your mind, and why?
It's going to be tough for Giannis to come back being the only true superstar on the Bucks, but if some people say, like Ryan and other people on the MI6 network saying he's the best in the world, if he's best in the world, he should be able to come back from this 2-0 deficit. But if he can't and gets swept, that takes that question out of the ballpark. So I feel like he's going to be able to win game 3, but if he can't win game 4, it's most likely in the books after that.
Yeah, Trevor, I agree with you that, 2-0 sounds grim in a series. But I think, though, if you fall behind 3-0, then you're really behind the 8 ball, where, again, you lose that next game, you're done in a 4-0 sweep, though. But I think, though, it's going to take more than just Giannis to be able to lift this Milwaukee team, whether it's the Lopez brothers, Middleton, Bledsoe, somebody else other than Giannis to carry this load, though, and that with that piano on his back, though. So I won't count them out yet, though. But if they fall behind 3-0, it's probably, set in stone, make the bed and lay in it. So we'll see how things go on. With that in mind, Isaiah, back over to you. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing before we move on from this game, and that is, you just got to look at the sequence in last night's game when the Miami Heat legitimately put 4 guys on Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they just had one guy guarding, I think it was Chris Middleton. That just shows you how much respect they've got for the other guys. They don't have any respect whatsoever for Brook Lopez, and George Hill and any of these other guys. They are daring them to step up and beat them by putting 4 guys on Giannis and 1 guy on Chris Middleton. So I honestly just think that this series right now is over because the Heat just got too much weapons on their side.
A lot of people probably agree with that in regards to how Miami has looked so far in these first 2 games. I think, though, that I would think that right now still, maybe if in fact they fall behind 3-0, it might be over. But if Milwaukee can win game 1 or win game 3, at least get 1 win in the column and at least get some confidence, maybe that perhaps could change, though, for the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll see how things move on from there. With that, Trevor, going over to the other game 7 I was referencing at the top of the show, though, which was the Rockets and the Thunder. Again, another very great instant classic series, though. But mainly, I think it also boils down to, I think also in this game, a referee crew, and also about the last possession of the game. James Harden, always criticized for playing terrible defense. What does he do? Blocks the potential game-winning shot to lift the Rockets over Oklahoma City to face the Lakers in round 2, starting tomorrow evening down in the bubble. Trevor, first, man, let's get your thoughts, though, about the game. And also, mainly more so, let's talk the game first, though. I think instant classic, great game between 2 very good veteran-led ball clubs. But in the end, though, it's the Rockets knocking off Oklahoma City.
I personally look at the series as a whole with saying the value of Chris Paul in this series to take OKC to a game 7 against an elite Houston Rocket team. Just think about if I was talking with Isaiah on the phone as I was getting dinner, and I was saying if Chris Paul was able to win that series, does the value of Chris Paul, quote unquote, being better than Russell Westbrook, and based on that value of that trade? So it was saying at that point, if Chris Paul was able to win it, he's way better than Russell Westbrook. And he was able to take a Oklahoma City team in his first year against a number 3 seed and just be able to take him to a game 7. Russell Westbrook wasn't really able to do that when he was just him by himself. So at the same time, it just shows you that Chris Paul was a better hustle, more of a hustle athlete, able to get more points, was aggressive on defense. And it just shows that at the end of the day, defense ends up almost winning you championships almost.
Isaiah, what do you make about the game as a whole? We'll get to more about, the game-winning block shot, maybe the referee conspiracy in regards to Chris Paul and one of the referees having some legitimate beef over the past several years momentarily. But give me your thoughts, though, about how this game went and how the series ultimately went between Oklahoma City and Houston.
I agree with Trevor completely. I don't think that moving on from Chris Paul and getting Russell Westbrook was really an upgrade for the Houston Rockets. In fact, I think they downgraded, because if you look at it, Russell Westbrook in crunch time, he couldn't make a shot to save his life, while Chris Paul was draining shot after shot after shot. So I think the Rockets made a mistake by trading for Russell Westbrook. I know why they did it, because Russell Westbrook is obviously younger than Chris Paul. But come on, man, Chris Paul is so clutch when you need him to be. But in terms of this game, I just got to say, Mike D'Antoni, after the game last night, should have went back to his hotel room, went down on his knees, and thanked the good Lord that he is still employed, because that guy was so close to being unemployed. Oklahoma City and Billy Donovan had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 freaking chances to win the ball game in the closing seconds yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, on Wild Sports Talk yesterday, I went all raw about how Billy Donovan is one of the best coaches in the NBA and how he is so good, this and that. And today, I'm extremely humbled, and I gotta, eat a massive plate of crow and take all of that back. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I can coach better than Billy Donovan. The decision Decision making and play calling yesterday by Billy Donovan in the final 3 possessions of that game was horrible and downright atrocious, and it left you scratching your head. First of all, let's talk about when he sent Danilo Gallinari to the free throw line to take the free throw when the Rockets were up 104-102. I get that Danilo Gallinari has an 89% free throw shooting percentage, but come on, man. You can't send Danilo Gallinari to that line in that situation. You got to send CP3 to the line in that situation. We are talking about clutch closing situations. I knew Gallinari was going to miss that free throw simply because he hasn't been in those types of massive pressure situations before. So I knew the pressure was going to get all in his head, and voila, he missed the damn free throw. Chris Paul has way more experience in that department than Danilo Gallinari. He's your star on your team. You got to trust him, Billy Donovan, in that closing clutch situation. You got to sink or swim with Chris Paul. Any other situation, Gallinari can take that free throw. But in that situation, you need Chris Paul to take that free throw. And then let's move on to the play before the final play. Callan, do we have that picture?
Yes, we do. Here it is.
Awesome. All right, you guys see that picture over there? So so SGA, what are you doing, man? What are you looking at? You have Steven Adams cutting right to the basket. He is so wide open. There is a gaping hole right there. Steven Adams could have sat down, had a picnic, ate a club sandwich, and even possibly drank a whole bottle of wine and still be able to get up and dunk the damn basketball. That's how open he was going to be if you actually spotted him. You could have tied the game right there. And then let's move on to the final possession, the infamy possession. First of all, Billy Donovan, I got to ask you, what the heck are you drawing up there? You should have stuck with the previous play and had Adams cut to the basket, and he would have been wide open again for you to tie the ball game. And secondly, Steven Adams, what are you doing in the middle of the scrum near Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trying to screen and push Rockets defenders out of the way? It doesn't make any sense. Cut to the damn hoop, my guy, and have SGA lob it up to you. The Rockets can't stop you because you're like 5 inches taller than any of those Rockets players on the court. It's literally like that picture of Yao Ming standing back to back with Kevin Hart. That's how bad, or that's how taller you are than the rest of those Rockets players. It doesn't make any sense, man. I think Billy Donovan is the main culprit in the Thunder losing this game with his pathetic play calling, drawing up plays, and terrible decision-making down the stretch. And it's so sad that the Thunder had so many opportunities to win this game, but they just ultimately couldn't do it.
So, Trevor, in your mind, I think Isaiah's onto a good point, though, that maybe that final possession probably falls, sadly, on the shoulders of Billy Donovan for maybe not working things out again. Steven Adams, per this photo, again, we'll throw it back on screen, though, but as mentioned with SGA throwing things in there, but man, oh man, I mean, with every other player practically guarded, he had 2 options with Adams in the middle and then one more option at the very top of the screen there, and he chose not to go the route of that. Trevor, in your mind, does perhaps Billy Donovan earn the brunt of the blame for the Thunder's loss last night? What do you think?
Well,
we sadly, folks, lost Trevor, so we'll get his thoughts here in just a moment when he's able to get back real quick. But I think, Isaiah, you're probably onto probably the right track, though, that perhaps the blame probably does, in fact, go on Billy Donovan for that missed call, as we do, in fact, bring Trevor back on here. Trevor, let's have that again. Take 2 in action.
I really don't know what's happening, but I really didn't get your question, Colin, because the audio was cutting in and out. So I'll just
do you believe that Billy Donovan deserves much of the blame, if not all the blame, for the final possession there for Oklahoma City?
I think it probably most likely is because that's more of a coaching issue. And like when you're in a tight game like that, a coach needs to know how to manipulate the game to give his players the best opportunity to score a basket or come up with a play in the final few seconds to either tie the game or take that deep winning three to help them put them up by one and end up closing out that series. That's the whole purpose of a coach. And I think no matter what star player you have on the court and what their shooting percentage is, if you don't draw up the play to do it, there's no way you're going to be able to win a close game like that.
Definitely a great fellas for sure. And again, folks, the Thunder and the Rockets playing a 7-game series last night. Real quick, guys, a quick comment from Christy Wilson. And I think she agrees with us here. Donovan's play calling very confusing, or confusing in general. I think a lot of people definitely agree. Isaiah, what do you got for us?
All I'm going to say is that picture that you just showed up on the screen, Callan, is going to haunt Oklahoma City Thunder fans for the rest of this entire offseason. Because he was wide open, man. He was wide open.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. I think Billy Donovan may be waking up with cold sweats and probably with nightmares about that call. But again, stuff happens where, in fact, things don't go the right way. Isaiah, that does, though, bring a very interesting question to the front, though. Per a report I saw last night from Mark J. Spears on Twitter, that apparently there was a bit of a gripe or some beef between Chris Paul and one of the head referees last night by apparently the referee, forget his name, though, but I remember seeing this report, though, last night, I believe from Mark Spears of Yahoo Sports, though, where I believe, I want to say it was Scott Foster. I might be wrong on this, though. But the referee pretty much told Chris Paul, "Hey, don't forget, don't forget, I was the referee when you were last eliminated from the postseason." So I don't know, man, if there's like any legs to the story, though, man. But I found that tweet to be very, very interesting. I'll try and pull it up for you guys. But Isaiah, that's kind of a very bizarre sort of turn of events, though. If in fact any of that comes to light and come to fruition, what do you perhaps make about maybe this conspiracy or maybe some beef between Chris Paul and the NBA referees?
Well, I mean, if that's true, then I think the NBA should not let that referee ref any more games against Chris Paul, because he obviously has an agenda against Chris Paul. And it's just like what happened in the Sacramento Kings Lakers series when that referee started making all these like calls, and then he admitted afterward that they were just like favoring the Lakers, I believe, because they had some beef against the Sacramento Kings, and it just ruined the entire game. So I think that if this is true, and I think the NBA should do an investigation on this, if this is true, I think that ref should not be allowed to ref in the NBA again, because you can't be that biased. You can't be biased towards a certain player. You can't. You have to be neutral in your position as a referee.
So real quick, guys, Matt Young of the Houston Chronicle. My goodness, folks, my apologies for that. My apologies for the sunset right behind me here. Looks like we have like someone watching the program from behind me. But folks, here is the story, by the way, from Matt Young of the Houston Chronicle in regards to what we had just talked about here. But a very quick excerpt from Matt's article reads the following. Chris Paul is eliminated from the postseason, but he did not leave the NBA bubble without taking one last shot at much criticized NBA official Scott Foster. So I was, in fact, right about that. Foster, who has a long history with both Chris Paul and James Harden, whistled the Oklahoma City point guard for a delay of game that resulted in a technical foul shortly before halftime of the Rockets' 104-102 Game 7 victory on Wednesday in the Orlando bubble. Following the loss, Chris Paul said before the delay of game was called, he was indeed stalling by tying his shoe so he could get a peek at a replay to see if the Thunder should challenge the previous call on the floor. Chris Paul told this quote to the press last night about Scott Foster by saying, quote, "Scott Foster walked over to me and told me, 'Chris, you ain't going to do that. I got them sweeping up the floor,'" Paul said after the Thunder loss. Chris then said, "Okay, cool. So I started to tie my shoe back up, and he still calls delay of game. That bleep don't make no sense. I don't know. We could have won the game, but that situation, the league knows. Yeah, they're going to find me. I said his name. We all know the history," close quote. Harden would make the free throw following the technical foul to give the Rockets the 54-52 lead with just about 2:30 to go in the first half. And further, folks, real quick before we, in fact, move on here on this, Paul, who has lost his last 10 playoff games in which Foster was an official, also said that Foster approached him before the opening tip-off and told him he was a referee back in 2008 when the Hornets lost Game 7 to the San Antonio Spurs of the Western Conference semifinals. When Paul was with Houston, he criticized Foster after he lost to the Lakers, in which the official gave technical fouls to both Paul and head coach Mike D'Antoni. Further, real quick as well, Paul said, yeah, Scott Foster at his finest. Paul said that night of a technical foul he received from Foster when talking with official Courtney Kirkland. You know what I mean? He just never fails, close quote. So, Trevor, I don't know, man, but this, I think, just adds another layer, I think, onto this very weird referee-player beef going on here right now. But then, though, Trevor, I mean, the audacity of Scott Foster to remind Chris Paul and rub in his face, hey, by the way, you remember I was a referee when you lost in Game 7 in 08 against the Spurs, right? You know, that was me, Scott Foster. Trevor, thoughts about this story that now has pretty much surfaced over the last several days?
You can't do that to the player. It's like the player can't touch the ref. So, like, that's almost like taunting. That should be almost like a foul at that point. Like, refs should not be doing that to players. It's not right. But at the same time, I kind of want to make the joke that since, you know, Chris Paul is in all those State Farm commercials, maybe he doesn't have State Farm. Maybe he has bad experience with State Farm. So he may be like the farmer's guy and, you know, doing something else like that. So I got to throw my little insurance fund joke out there. But at the end of the day, refs should not be making gestures like that. That's disrespectful. You're a professional and you should be just refereeing the game. You shouldn't have hidden agendas, try to mess up a player's legacy when we go back to analyzing in these Game 7s, but you still have an overlying outcast was that ref was the reason why they couldn't get past that Game 7. And that's going to affect their legacy, and you can't change that.
Isaiah, I don't know if it's on the same plateau as the 2002 referee snafu between the Lakers and Kings, though. But it certainly, though, man, I think raises questions, though, about referee professionalism and, above all else, referee ethics in regards to, again, right down the middle, being impartial, being neutral for both sides, though. But, man, though, to rub it in the man's face that he was a referee when they lost in 2008 in another Game 7, my goodness, man. Final takeaways from this story that, again, surfaced last night, first by Mark J. Spears of Yahoo Sports and also by Matt Young of the Houston Chronicle.
I mean, it just goes to show you what I was talking about. I think it was on Monday's episode of Wild Sports Talk that referees and umpires need to be held accountable. There is no accountability when it comes to referees and umpires. You know, they're kind of like dictators now. They can do whatever the heck they want and they like can get away with it. While the players, if you say something bad about the referee, you're getting fined. So I just think that these professional sports leagues and even college sports leagues too, they need to, you know, set some accountability when it comes to referees and umpires.
I definitely think for sure. And again, very interesting story, I think, guys, that has, again, developed or did, in fact, come to fruition last night. And Christy Wilson agrees. Scott Foster crossed the line, in her opinion. Definitely crossed the line. Definitely crossing a couple lines there in regards to, for one, taunting a player about past history. And also, more than anything else, though, as well, holy cow, in regards to the calls made, too, down the stretch. With that, Trevor, final question for this block here of the program, pretty plain simple. Did the Thunder choke or did the Rockets win it? What do you think?
I was just going to say that the Rockets just got lucky. And with all the circumstances we're going into this game,
Looks like we've lost Trevor by virtue of some technical faults, folks. And, you know, we were actually saying, Isaiah, before the show that it would not be a MI6 Sports Network show without some technical faults. With that, Isaiah, let's hear your thoughts. Did Oklahoma City choke or did the Rockets win this thing?
Oh, I think the Thunder for sure choked the game because they got 6 chances to win the game. And, you know, normally if you had a competent coach out there calling plays and designing plays and also making decisions, I think that team would win the game. So obviously the Thunder choke, but they're a very young team. They're going to learn from this. And I think that this is going to sit with them until next season. And I think they're going to use it as fire to come back even stronger next season, because let's not forget this Thunder team, they weren't supposed to even be here this season. They were supposed to be a team that was supposed to get the #1 pick in the NBA draft, but instead, somehow, some way, they played loose. They played with nothing to lose, and they came out on fire, and then they got the 5th seed in the loaded Western Conference playoffs, and they forced a Game 7 against the mighty Houston Rockets. That's already a really incredible accomplishment. I think it's a fantastic year for Oklahoma City. Their fans shouldn't lower their head that much, even though they choked this one game. But hey, you learn from it and get better, and get better next season.
All right, Travis again, buddy. What do you make of this? Did Oklahoma City choke, or did Houston win this game last night?
I'm going to stick with what I said. Like, Houston Rockets got lucky. The Chris Paul and Scott Foster issue, that was a thing looming over that entire game. And at the same time, like Isaiah said, you had 6 chances to win it. But at the same time, you still have 2 superstars who can drop 30 points on any team on any given night. So it's just like, the Rockets had more firepower. In reality, they should end up winning that series. So at the end of the day, if you look at stats and paper, the Rockets were just the team to end up winning that series at the end of the day.
Definitely agreed for sure. And again, folks, keep those thoughts coming along as, in fact, we move on into our next topic here. And that, guys, is the very interesting move made today by the Brooklyn Nets. That is hiring, for one, Cal McClurg's favorite NBA player of all time, but also a man with no coaching experience, and that is NBA Hall of Famer Steve Nash to become their new head coach, signing a 4-year contract today. And Trevor, we'll start with you on this one. Mainly, though, man, from what I had read today, earlier this morning, good relationship with his former teammate Sean Marks, who again played with him back in the day with the Phoenix Suns, and also a very good relationship, of course, now with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, who both signed off on this move to bring Steve in to become the head coach of the Nets, the 23rd head coach in New York / New Jersey / Brooklyn franchise history. Trevor, I think a lot of people very surprised about this. In fact, that it's one of the greatest players of all time, 2-time MVP. Obviously not winning a title as a player, though. Won one, though, with Golden State as a player consultant. But I think, though, a guy, though, with no coaching experience, though, and again, we've seen a lot of guys, though, that have been great players who had no experience coaching, who I think became great coaches. Isaiah Thomas for a bit, Larry Bird, Steve Kerr, notably, some of the 3 guys I can think of off the top of my head. So, Trevor, your reaction to the Nets hiring Steve Nash, of all people, pretty much, to become the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets basketball team?
This is more of the interesting pickups by any team that I've ever seen in a while. But at the same time, it's Steve Nash. Like you said, he was on the Warriors. It was Steve Kerr getting some coaching experience. So he was part of that Warriors team to be more self-sustained and learning how to coach star players and young talent. So him coming to Brooklyn, now you have 2 star players. Now can you get a third to build almost like a 3-piece and end up building a team that can be a playoff contender or a Eastern Conference champion to go into the NBA Finals? But at the end of the day, can he get that third piece? That's the thing I'm looking for. Can he attract Giannis to come to Brooklyn? And now you have a team that can just run the East for at least solid 3 years or a good 2 years with the potential to win the 2 titles. Or can he get somebody in the draft that would be, hey, this is a hot talent that can work with KD and Kyrie? So this is going to be an interesting how he ends up coaching in the offseason for sure.
Isaiah, it'll be very interesting to see how, in fact, the Nets are able to make this work, though, by virtue of, again, a guy like Steve Nash, great player consultant, but again, has never coached before at any level, head coach, assistant coach, you name it, whatever's going on. But I think, though, that mainly I've thought about it a lot, long and hard today. And by virtue of the relationship that's already been built between him and Kevin Durant is a reason as to why I think Durant and both Kyrie Irving both signed off on this. Because I think, though, that right now, if you were to probably take the temperature of New York basketball fandom, I know that both teams probably are not the best or sharpest tools in the shed, though. But I think, though, the Nets, in my mind, look way sexier than the Knicks if I'm a basketball fan in New York and I'm trying to find a team to root for, because they look good. 2 bona fide superstars in Irving and KD. Now, though, as well, some history with KD and Steve Nash, but also a great guy like Nash who, has earned the respect of players around the league and stuff like that. I think that like I said this morning, this could be very well. And I think, though, that Steve will probably struggle as any first-year coach does and go through some hiccups. I think, though, more than anything else, though, big-time props for the Nets to extend Jacques Vaughn to be his main assistant coach. And Isaiah, I know it's a very surprising move, though, but I think one that probably, in my mind, works out for Brooklyn long-term. What do you think, though, about the hiring of Steve Nash?
Well, so let me start with what happened last night. Last night, I had a dream that, me, Callan, and Jonathan Mathis, who is our co-host on WST, shout out to him. We had gotten big and we had replaced Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman on First Take, and we were doing our thing, debating a random topic. I don't remember what it was. And then all of a sudden, we got a tweet from Adrian Wojnarowski that Luka Doncic had tore his ACL, and I woke up like, oh my gosh. And then I was all in sweats. I was panting. It was just really shocking. And then I looked on my phone, and then all of a sudden I see Steve Nash is going to be the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I think that dream was the universe telling me that a bombshell had dropped, because right then, right there, Woj tweeted it out. But in all seriousness, though, it was a very, very shocking hire. I honestly thought for the Brooklyn Nets, we had been hearing Greg Popovich. I didn't know how likely that was going to be. I thought Mark Jackson was honestly going to be the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, simply because there was a report that came out I think a month ago that Kevin Durant really wanted Mark Jackson to be the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. So I thought that Mark Jackson going to Brooklyn was a foregone conclusion. But then this news drops, and I was just I was just scratching my head. I was like, wow, it's really crazy, because first of all, Steve Nash, as you mentioned, he doesn't have any head coaching experience. But he has a great relationship with Kevin Durant, so I think that's why he landed the job, as well as a great relationship with Sean Marks, the Nets general manager. I'm really interested to see what offensive and defensive system that Steve Nash decides to run. I kind of liken this to when the Brooklyn Nets kind of did the same thing in luring a Hall of Fame point guard in Jason Kidd to coach a superstar studded team with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, Darren Williams, Joe Johnson back in 2013, but that didn't really work out. But the reason why that didn't really work out was because Jason Kidd hired a bunch of yes men, and he didn't really hire a lot of guys with experience. So I think Nash needs to learn from Jason Kidd. I think he needs to hire a staff full of guys with a lot of head coaching experience, which would really help him, like Steve Kerr did in Golden State. And also, I think he needs to take some of his players' input, just like Steve Kerr did, because if you do what Jason Kidd did, which was just go in and be sort of like a dictator, it's not your older veteran players aren't going to listen to you. So I'm really interested to see who Steve Nash puts on his coaching staff, and I think that will dictate if he succeeds or not in Brooklyn.
Definitely agree. And I think, though, that having Jacques Vaughn kind of being that voice or that guy to kind of lean on for advice, definitely in my mind, is a good way to go. And real quick, Christy Wilson, Nash being hired by the Nets is surprising to me. To hear that KD wanted him there in Brooklyn is just as surprising. And again, I think that just probably comes up from the relationship, though, with him playing in Golden State. And also, Christy says Isaiah would probably put Stephen A to shame. I think John would also do that as well. Definitely, for sure, with that thought process as well. But again, folks, congrats to Steve Nash, named the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Again, a 4-year deal for Mr. Nash. And again, we'll see how he fares in his first time being an NBA head coach or head coach in general for any of his time recently. With that, Isaiah, going over to Major League Baseball, the Padres just were shut out by the LA Angels 2-0 today. But of course, we'll take on the Oakland A's tomorrow. And thankfully and mercifully, folks, the A's are cleared to resume baseball activities tomorrow, again, by virtue of a positive test for COVID-19. Their entire series this week wiped off the board with the Seattle Mariners. And I will say, Isaiah, like I've said, though, man, ever since the trade deadline passed on Monday, and I had said plenty of times, hey, it was great for once that it was San Diego and Miami and Toronto being involved in the mix for the trades, though. How about a weekend like this where it's the Padres and Athletics, though, and two teams, I think, who probably should earn the praise, though, of being the biggest surprises in Major League Baseball, and also two teams whose offenses could probably make this a 20, this game could probably finish 20-19 with how explosive these offenses are for both these sides, though. So, Isaiah, it's going to be a fun weekend, man. Probably going to be some pretty funny banter between the two of us, man. But it's going to be a good one, though, up at the Coliseum. Your thoughts about, for one, though, mainly, though, both these teams, probably, I think, in both of our minds, really surprising a lot of people and turning heads this season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Callan. It's going to be a fun series this weekend. I believe that the A's will sweep your San Diego Padres. I'm just joking about that, but I think that, it's going to come down to who can pitch better, because we both know that both of these offenses are fantastic. You've got Tatis, Manny Machado, Eric Hosmer leading the way for the San Diego Padres. And for the Oakland A's, you've got guys like Matt Chapman, Steven Piscotty, Mark Canha, Matt Olson leading the way. So these offenses are fantastic. They can hit the ball a long way, but it's going to come down to the pitching. Whoever can pitch the best will win this series. And, I think for this series, I think that this could potentially be a World Series preview, given how these two teams are right now two of the hottest teams in baseball. So I'm really interested to see who wins it. But I just think that in terms of this series, I think it's going to come down to obviously the starting pitchers.
Definitely, Trevor, I think that this series, though, while it's going to be, very, sexy on paper, if you love numbers and analytics and StatCast and launch angle and, projected home run distance and exit velocity, it's going to be sexy if you love numbers. But I think, though, it's going to boil down, though, to both pitching and the bullpens in this series, because right now the Padres are lined up to have Zach Davies pitch on Friday, Chris Paddock throw on Saturday, and Garrett Richards throw on Sunday. Again, as we already talked about, folks, but again, the A's had their entire week of action until tomorrow practically wiped off the board by virtue of a couple of positive COVID-19 tests. Their entire series this week with the Mariners has been axed for right now off the schedule. So, Trevor, in your mind, though, what probably is the big factor in your mind for the series, though? Is it going to be the offenses who can just hit the ball out of the ballpark all night, or what we all probably agree on here, starting pitching and also the relief corps?
I think it's going to be the relief corps 100% in most cases. When you have two teams that look almost identical on paper with a lot of the same wins and losses, and they're both on they're only one game separating each other from their last 10 games. So a lot of it's going to be really close, but I think it's going to be coming down to the last three innings 7, 8, and 9. That's what's going to end up dictating this series right here. For me personally, I think they're going to end up splitting it based on how much talent and firepower that they all have. But like I said, it's the last three innings are going to make or break this series right here.
It will be a big one. And again, though, folks, two good teams. Again, very surprising. Again, probably making fans tune into the ball games. Again, a 3-game set kicking off at the Oakland Alameda County Ring Central Coliseum tomorrow, starting at 6:40 tomorrow night. Then day games at 1:10 on Saturday and Sunday. And again, Isaiah Sally, the A's, though, again, as mentioned, wiped off the board this week by virtue of a couple of positive COVID tests. I understand you have some info to pass along for one of the positive tests that were, in fact, in the news today by the Oakland A's.
Yeah, I just want to, I don't know if you're watching, but Daniel Mingden, if you're watching, just want to tell you, we wish you nothing but the best, and we wish you a safe and speedy recovery from COVID-19. Hopefully, right now, hopefully that you get through this fine and 100% and back on the field to go and kick some butt.
Yeah, and again, all the best to Sean, and again, hopefully it is nothing too serious in regards to the COVID outbreak. And again, folks, the A's will be back in action after, again, having to sit on the sidelines for the past couple of days due to a couple of positive COVID-19 tests. They'll take on the Padres tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, kicking off a series at the Oakland Coliseum. Again, 6:40, 1:10, 1:10 game times. With that, Trevor, today's the official start of what is right now a very big-time abnormal college football season by virtue of the fact, as mentioned, some conferences not playing right now. Some conferences are, in fact, playing right now. And again, a lot of implications in place. But, Trevor, give me maybe one college football team to watch for this season during this, again, very abbreviated and, again, very weird and abnormal college football season? Who is it and why?
So the team I'm going with, it's not your Power 5 conference. I'm going to the Group of 5 conference. I'm going with Memphis. The American Conference is on the up and coming. And last year they ended up winning the conference, playing Penn State in the Cotton Bowl. Though they weren't successful, they were able to compete in that game. So that team is going to have a lot of big target on their back and be able to end up dominating. And that conference alone had at least 5 teams finish with double-digit wins. So like that shows that the American Conference is up and coming. It's about to get spicy this year. So I can't wait for it to unfold to see who ends up becoming the top dog in that conference.
All right, Isaiah, we got Trev going with the Memphis Tigers of the American Conference. What about you? Again, maybe one, maybe a couple college football teams to watch out for as this very abbreviated and, again, very abnormal college football season gets underway today.
All right, so I got a couple. Number one is definitely got to be the Georgia Bulldogs. You know, they return one of the best defenses in the country. They've got a great offensive line coming back. The receivers, you know, they're young, but they're really, really talented. The running backs, you know, we know what Georgia can do on the running game. They've got a fantastic head coach in Kirby Smart, and they just got one of the best transfer quarterbacks from USC and JT Daniels, who's got a phenomenal arm. He is going to take over for Jamie Newman, who just opted out yesterday. I think he's a major upgrade over Jamie Newman and a better fit in the air raid scheme that Georgia's going to run this season in the SEC. And I just think like Georgia's primed to go and win a national championship. You know, they've been close a few times. And right now, with no fans in the stands, Alabama's crowd not going to be as raucous as usual. Auburn's not going to be as raucous as usual. That's going to affect a lot of programs. And I just think right now Georgia has the team both on offense and defense and coaching to go and win that national championship. And another team that I would definitely look out for is, ladies and gentlemen, this season we're not going to have the Big Ten. We're not going to have the Pac-12. So it's only going to be the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC, and I think the some of the Group of 5 that are going to make the abbreviated college football playoff. So I think there's going to be 2 teams in the SEC. It's going to be Georgia, 1, and then the other team that I have is a team that's going to really, really shock you. Callan, you might as well get that shock GIF ready, and that team is Mississippi State. I know a lot of you guys are going to be like, oh my God, Isaiah, go get drug tested or whatever. The reason why I'm saying Mississippi State is because they had one of the best defenses last year. Their offense was horrific. They went 7-5 or 7-6 last season with a terrible offense that only scored like 13 points a game. It was their defense that was leading them to wins. They returned that defense. They fired their head coach in the offseason, Joe Moorhead. He's out, and they replaced him with the dynamic, great offensive mind in Mike Leach, who everywhere he goes, everywhere Mike Leach has been, he's put up a ton of points on offense. So I think with that dynamic offense that Mike Leach is going to run and that dynamic defense that Mississippi State has returning, look out for Mississippi State in 2020.
So Mississippi State being one of the teams that Isaiah is looking at, and also, of course, Georgia. Guys, I'm going to go to two programs right now that right now are not playing as of now in the fall season, but probably in the spring, though. Michigan and USC. For the sheer fact, Trevor, I think you're going to like what I'm going to say, though. I know you can't stand blue in your wardrobe, buddy. That's why you're wearing red tonight. Because they're probably, guys, in my mind, the 2 biggest programs, not playing right now, but probably could play, though, eventually, that have head coaches on the hot seat. Clay Helton, of course, and let's not forget about Mr. Harbaugh. If Harbaugh cannot beat Brutus this year, I don't see how those boosters and how the alumni can let him hang around in regards to, again, losing once more to Michigan again, and also, of course, Clay Helton and USC, again, needing some kind of a uplift for sure. But again, folks, we'd love to hear your thoughts, though, about who is a program you're keeping an eye on. Christy says she's going to go with Clemson in the ACC as a team to watch. Definitely cannot bet against the champs and, of course, against Trevor Lawrence, again, of course, who's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NFL draft next year. So with that, guys, we'll segue over to tonight's Power 5. And now for your 7 o'clock newscast, we now go to Callan, Trevor, and Isaiah. I always feel like I'm going to be delivering like the 7 o'clock evening newscast whenever we do Power 5. But again, folks, it is Power 5 time on No BS Season 2, Episode 6. And tonight, get the sweet tooth ready and make sure your stomach is ready to go for some top 5 desserts by virtue of Isaiah having a 2-show streak of having food shown live on air. That was by virtue, again, of the very now infamous Texas Roadhouse rant, which, of course, has also made this new buzzer and this new GIF we've been sharing by virtue of Isaiah with the food last program. But with that, though, Trev, dessert time is on the menu for our Power 5. Let's hear it, man. What do you got?
All right. So my number 5th spot, right now it seems I'm going to put a lot of ice cream on this list, but let me see if I can turn the course. So my number 5th spot, I'm going to go with the strawberry shortcake since we're coming up with Labor Day. Just having a nice strawberry shortcake on a nice hot Labor Day is a nice touch to it. So that's why I end up having that in the 5th spot. My 4th spot will be the ice cream sandwich. Just a nice to bring your summer to a close. The chocolate sticking to your fingers because it's melting. And it's just a nice, cool bite as you bite into it. So that's really nice in the number 4 spot. My number 3 spot, I'm going to have to go with apple pie. Yes, I'm changing it up, bringing that good classic American tradition. The apple pie, you can't get much American than pumpkin pie, but I would say apple pie is a lot better than pumpkin pie in my own opinion. Number 2, I'm going to have to go with the traditional birthday cake. When it's your birthday, that's the first thing you end up getting. It's like so exciting, and it's like you have different variations of the cake. My favorite would be like the ice cream cake. See, I'm locking in my ice cream all the way through this list as best of my ability. But yes, birthday cake is always going to be probably in that top, like in your dessert lineup. No matter where you are, just having a slice of birthday cake is really nice. And then my number 1 will most likely be, I'll probably say a dessert will probably be a root beer float. Though you may say it's a drink, but it's a nice treat after you had dinner and you just want to say, hey, let me kick back and get a root beer float. So that's why I will put as my number 1.
I could see Isaiah because, folks, when we go to the one-person view and we're not in the tri-view like this, I can see everyone's reactions. And again, Isaiah gave us the patent-pending trademark hand when Trevor said the root beer float. So, Isaiah, we'll let you have the floor now for your top or Power 5 desserts because you love to eat on live programming, apparently.
Yeah, I should have brought some of the desserts on today. I was going to bring a big apple pie with a scoop of vanilla ice cream and just eat it on the show.
No,
like
no more food live on air. But please, let's hear it.
But Trevor, I was gonna walk off the set when you said the root beer float, man. The root beer float at 1. Come on, man. I can name like 20 better desserts than the root beer float at 1. But hey, it's your list. For me, number 5 on my list is the chocolate chip cookie. A nice chocolate chip cookie, man, is always the best. Like you pair it with a glass of milk, it's just freaking amazing. Number 4 on my list, and this is really tough because I literally spent 3 hours going through this list because there was like
Isaiah, you wanted to make a point about. Oh.
It is like I see. What?
Yes. Yes, I spent 3 hours crafting this list. There was like 30 desserts. I had to narrow it all into to the top 5. So this was very tough. But number 4, I gotta go with the Oreo cake, the Oreo birthday cake from Safeway that I just had recently on my birthday. It was freaking so good. It was like a chocolate cake with Oreos, and then in the middle, the cream was Oreo cream. It was just so delicious. I really recommend you all to go check that out. Number 3 on my list has got to be the strawberry shortcake. And the best strawberry shortcake that I've ever had was at this restaurant that has now closed, unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, Sweet Tomatoes, or Soup Plantation that it's known, down in Southern California. They had fresh, warm, fluffy pound cake, and then you just put some whipped cream on it, plus some fresh strawberries, and it's so, so good. And then number 2, I definitely gotta go with the ice cream sandwich. And Trevor, it's not the normal ice cream sandwich that you're talking about. It's the ice cream sandwich that you can get from the Cream ice cream store, which is they actually have 2 fresh chocolate chip cookies, fresh from the oven, and then they put 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream right in the middle of those 2 giant chocolate chip cookies. It's amazing. It's really good. I really recommend you guys to all go check that out as well. And number 1 on this list, it might cause Callan and Trevor to walk off the set. It's the pumpkin pie. The pumpkin pie, best dessert ever. I would, like, on Thanksgiving, like, forget the turkey, forget the stuffing and all that. I would just eat one pumpkin pie from Costco. Get the pumpkin pie from Costco, ladies and gentlemen, and put a scoop of whipped cream on it. It is so fantastic. The pumpkin pie is my number 1 best dessert.
You make my root beer float look bad.
Absolutely terrible. Christy agrees. OMG, now I'm hungry. I've had that comment up for a while. Maybe it's not a good idea, Isaiah, to do food power 5s around 7 o'clock Pacific time when some of us are either still eating or are getting ready to eat. I kept mine pretty basic for my Power 5, folks, for desserts. Number 5, pie in general, but mainly apple pie. I would agree, especially we have very good apple pie here in San Diego, up in Julian, California. They make it fresh at 2 very good places. Literally can drive out there, grab it, come home, and eat that with either some decaf coffee, some milk, whatnot. I'm going to go off the board here with number 4. Some good old-fashioned strudel, number 4 for me for that, especially if you go to Solvang, California, a small little Danish town up by Santa Barbara, kind of tucked away from everything. They serve amazing strudel. They have fresh pastries and strudel every morning up there in Santa Ynez Valley. Number 3, good old fashioned chocolate cake, especially if you do the molten chocolate cake where it's warmed up, maybe some hot fudge on it. Definitely can go for that. Number 2, I love cookies in general, but mainly the good old fashioned cookie skillet from like Chili's or BJ's. Where they make the bazookies. Again, they take the skillet. Again, they make the cookie in there and a big old scoop of ice cream on top. But number 1 for me is ice cream in general, whether it's out of the carton, whether it's on a cake, whether it's a sandwich, whatnot. Good old-fashioned ice cream for sure takes the Power 5. But if you folks have a Power 5 of ice cream or dessert, definitely let us know. We will, of course, maybe take your advice, though, about what to perhaps have with our desserts. With that in mind, Trev, how about final thoughts for tonight's show?
All right, final thoughts. I will say I will put my honorable mention that was on the outside looking in. I would say cheesecake, and my top cheesecake that I had in my cheesecake career would probably be my chocolate lava cheesecake. So what the cheesecake was on the outside, and it was like it was hot fudge in the center with ice cream, and it was like so good. I had it for my 21st birthday, so it was a perfect way to continue my cheesecake career. But yes, it was a great show tonight. I can't wait I'm excited that college football is back. I'm going to be watching the American Conference because they have a lot of great storylines. I'm hoping they can reach the college football playoffs and upset a Power 5 team, and that will kind of push the gateway to open up a larger playoff bracket in the future. But yeah, I'm excited for tonight's show. I can't wait for next week's show.
It'll be a good one for sure. And I think not just that, though, kind of prove, hey, the group of 5 is just as good, if not maybe better in some capacity than the Power 5 schools for sure. So I would definitely keep an eye on the AAC this year. And Christy writes in one more notable option, fudge brownies. Got to go the route to a fudge brownies for dessert as well. Isaiah, how about you for final thoughts for tonight's show?
Yeah, it was a fantastic show. I shouldn't have talked earlier about Trevor putting the root beer float as number 1, because I followed it up with an even worse one by putting the I put the pumpkin pie at number 1, and all my credibility went away just like that. But yeah. But hey, it was a great show. Trevor, you forgot one more great dessert, and that is the creme brulee. The creme brulee, man, is so good. But great show tonight. I can't wait for next week's show. Next week's show is going to actually be really good, since we're going to be coming on the air, I believe, at halftime of the first NFL game of the season. Football is back. College football is coming back. Baseball, is in full swing. We got basketball in full swing. This is truly like that Christmas song. This is truly the most wonderful time of the year. I cannot wait to, after this show, go and watch the Southern Miss game and root for those Golden Eagles, man. Go Eagles.
Very well said, Isaiah, in regards to it being the most wonderful time of the year for sports fans. Trevor, what do you got for us, big fella?
I got one more thing. We have the MI6 fantasy draft, I believe, Sunday. So you get to see everyone on the MI6 network getting on the stream and watching us draft our fantasy football teams, because the NFL season's about to start. So tune in for that episode on Sunday.
Oh, if you folks thought we were a bunch of dinglings and a bunch of idiots on air, wait till you see the drama that may unfold in the draft again. Sadly, I don't think that we have the clip, though, anymore. But I do know, though, that Steven did roast Isaiah when we were celebrating Isaiah's birthday about him drafting Drew Lock, the quarterback for the Broncos, in the second round of the draft last year. So there may be more utter lunacy from Isaiah, and even from me, or even from anyone else, come Sunday for our MI6 Sports Network fantasy football. Again, we'll have that stream here for you folks on Sunday, and then of course we'll get back to work on Monday, and Wednesday, of course, for Wild Sports Talk. And again, folks, as a reminder, though, as we already had talked about yesterday, but a quick note once more. But again, Wild Sports Talk is going to a brand new start time starting next Monday. Join us at 7:30 p.m., not 6 p.m. now, but 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, for all the wild and crazy sports news, stories, and takes of the day with myself, Isaiah, and, of course, our main guy, John Mathison. We also, again, folks, want to send our deepest condolences and thoughts and prayers to John, who, again, lost a very, very near and dear friend, and more so a brother than a friend last night at the tail end of our show last night. So, again, we wish John and his family all the best. With that, folks, again, for Trevor Williams and for Isaiah Young and our main producer and engineer behind the scenes, Cheryl Stephen Wang. But sadly, when Stephen doesn't produce these programs and I do it, we have way more sound effects being utilized. So you'll be probably, folks, seeing more of the Family Feud buzzer and Callan doing the dog-style head turn being utilized. More often than you probably would like to see, though. So that is where we're at, folks. But again, we'll be back with you folks on Sunday again, as a reminder, for our NFL draft, or Fantasy Football League draft, back here on Sunday. And of course, Monday, getting back to work regular style with our programming back here next Monday. And also, Trevor, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that we have a pretty big Ohio State beat writer joining one of the programs next week. Is that correct? I
believe so. I don't know the exact date. I would have to look back at our chat. But yeah, that's coming up. I'm excited because we have some of our Ohio State members coming in and tuning in. So like Ryan, Steven, and Shree be able to ask this reporter some Ohio State questions and the foreseeable future of a Big Ten season. That's going to come in around November, it looks like. But who knows? That's timeline may get bumped up earlier, maybe to late October, but we have to wait and see what the Big Ten ends up deciding to do.
So for any Big Ten football fans out there, again, tune in this upcoming week. Isaiah, I guess, do you have anything to add further about next week? What do you got?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of glad that you brought it up, Callan. So we're going to be moving Wild Sports Talk next week. We're already moving it to 7:30, but we're moving the Wednesday show from Wednesday to Friday, and we're going to move Quarantine Chats from Friday to Wednesday. So you're going to have Quarantine Chats on Wednesday next week. It's only just next week for Wednesday, for Quarantine Chats, I mean. And we're going to have Ohio State football beat writer Joey Kaufman join the show. He writes for the Columbus Dispatch. He's a really phenomenal writer, and he's going to be on to talk about everything Ohio State related, Big Ten football, if it's going to come back or not. And also, he also covered USC briefly with Ryan Abraham, the legendary USC football writer. We might talk some USC. We don't know about that, but make sure you guys tune in. It's going to be an awesome, epic episode.
So again, folks, a couple notes there, but again, we'll have all that laid out for you folks in the coming few hours or over the course of tomorrow and the weekend. Also, folks, real quick about our MI6 Sports Network Hot Takes Challenge. Freddie Henderson upsets Ryan in the second round by virtue of a 16-12 vote. 57% of the vote overtaking Ryan. So Freddie moving on to the left side of the bracket's final round. And again, perhaps looking for the MI6 Hot Take Challenge championship, trophy, belt, whatever it's going to be. I think we can work on something eventually, but don't worry, folks. We'll have plenty more of those brackets, though, as more time moves on. We're just kind of getting it off the ground and running. But again, we'll probably having periodically having these sort of things, though, as time does move on. And again, folks, don't forget, come Sunday, we'll be having ourselves our fantasy football draft live on air for you folks back here on the MI6 Sports Network. Again, we'll have all the details for you folks later on, either today or over the course of the next couple of days. With that, folks, for Trevor Williams and Isaiah Leung, Cal McClurg signing off tonight. We'll see you folks back here, as mentioned, on Sunday for the MI6 Sports Network's Fantasy Football League, right back here on the MI6 Sports Network. Take care, folks. Have a good rest of your evening, and so long. Bye-bye.
Yeah. 3-6, Mafia.
Yeah.
Whoa. Hey, yeah. Whoa.
Say what? 3-6 Mafia. It's going down. Y'all know what time it is. We ain't playing with you. In the club, in the street.